This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me, I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know.
What is poppin', everybody? And welcome to another special episode of the Only Friends podcast. Well, you know, I'm here with my only friends. And that includes my boy, Tortue! But you know, the Tortue is pretty upset today. Today is a day where we take a moment for the Pittsburgh Pirates season that looks so good. Looked so good in the first 6 games.
Poor O'Neal Cruz.
O'Neal Cruz is
a rising star, phenom, 10-tool player.
He's also a falling star.
Yes. He has shattered his ankle,
Damn.
and he is out for probably 4 months
Oh
at least.
my God.
And if they don't just shut him down for the season, I'm not sure.
Right.
But, you know, we move on.
There's always next year.
The ship will battle. It will rage on.
You know, we also have some other guests in the building. What is poppin', sidekick?
just once, I was hoping to be your friend. You know, just once. I also thought you were going to be talking about. I thought Brian was going to be upset because OBJ signed with the Ravens.
Oh,
That,
Won't matter when they don't have a quarterback.
no, I'm still trying to get over Taylor's breakup with her boyfriend. There's a lot of things happening in my life right now. My whole world is crumbling around me.
Imagine something happens on Housewives tonight. You
Crumbling.
just
That
lose
sounds
it.
like an opportunity as far as I'm concerned.
Take it up with Michelle.
She'll be fine with it.
It's true. We were talking about it in the grocery store yesterday morning.
Yep. Yeah, I ran into Conrad. That's the good old local Smiths.
Yep.
Yep.
I will say this hair down look for you, Conrad. I like it.
Well, he's got my hair down.
I like the aesthetic. Sometimes
Do
it's
you?
not. I don't think he does.
I don't think you do either.
Not on the podcast usually, just because it's like the morning. My hair is usually wet, but
Yeah.
it's 83 degrees outside and happened to dry up on the way over here.
Brad, that spring was nice, huh? We had a nice 3 days of spring.
3 days, yep. We're
Right into
full
fucking summer.
Yep, gonna be 90 tomorrow.
AC's on, 90 degrees. Everyone's sweating their balls off.
My fucking hands are sweating right now.
I got the heat on. Literally, we just turned the heat off 2 days ago. Now it's 90.
Yeah.
Fuck you,
No,
Vegas.
it
absurd.
literally was like 4 days ago. The low was 34.
I know.
34 degrees,
know.
and now it's 90. It's
I know.
just wild.
Now I need to find a way to make up for the cold plunges I can no longer have in the pool. I think it's time.
I can wear my tank tops to the gym and walk, and it's not a problem.
That's true. I'm upset that of all the crazy fitness phase things that you've gotten onto, you haven't gotten into the cold ice baths yet, because I would love to not have to have the burden of paying $10K for a cold tub myself. Like, if you want to split that, I'm here for you.
That was where the money was going to go when you finished playing Airball Rick.
Oh, we're buying a cold tub.
Sure.
Okay.
We should have money for that.
Yeah, we should have money for that. I think we'll have money for that.
That's if he's not sick.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that this match is ever going to end.
Yeah, it will. Like 2032.
I mean, bro, I don't know what's going on over there. I don't know if he's really sick. But I do know that he has declared that his Tuesdays through Fridays are booked from now until forever. So there's no time to make these matches up.
That's a stark contrast from being able to play you every day for 30 days straight for a month.
Yeah, he got real busy after the first 3 sessions. Not really sure why. I mean, it's not like, you know, he doesn't have the biggest edge in the world, according to himself and all those willing to back his side. I'm chomping at the fucking bit. And I'm ready to get out there, man. I don't know what's taking so long. I imagine this is tactical. It's really hard for it not to be, right? Like, the guy comes in, gets mopped for 3 days, wins a couple lucky hands to make sure that it's still close, and then goes home and goes, fuck. Like, I bit off more than I can chew here. Daddy Doug, where you at? I need you, baby. I need you back in my life. Show me the Sims. Show me the way. I'm just using erratic random bet sizes. Tell me what the sizes are for each street. Help me, Doug. Help me. And Doug goes, you're beyond reproach. I'm sorry, sir. Hire someone else.
Yeah, so here we are. I guess next time you're going to play us in a couple weeks because of the academy.
I honestly don't know. We're scheduled to play Saturday. So we're supposed to get in one day next weekend. I would love to play sometime during this week. I'm really hoping that Phil is going to make some sort of ruling on this.
Is there a time frame on that?
I mean,
like when he makes a ruling.
We're on Phil's time, bro. The fact that he's even still willing to be an arbitrator in all of this is, I mean, the guy's a saint. I can't say enough good things about him. But yeah, I'm hoping that he makes some sort of ruling on this where we can start to make these matches up, because like backloading all these matches are so silly. Like, obviously we both have the same opportunity to study, so it's not like as if you know, him being able to put in hours is unequivalent to me being able to put in hours. But the problem is that us both raw, my win rate was astronomical. Like, he's just so fucking bad at poker and like doesn't understand pretty much anything other than have the nuts if you're going to play a 2,000 big blind pot. Like, that's basically his...
And then flex on you.
Yeah, that's like the grasp of what he understands poker-wise. And somehow, like, you know, everybody's managed to believe this to be some sort of superpower. Like, oh my God, Nick Airball, he's just crushing out there. You see these big pots he plays? He always has it. Like, yeah, he always has it. Pretty easy to get around. But now, you know, if he gets... It's going to be... We're going to play one match over the course of like 24 days. Assuming that we play on Saturday, and that 23 days off that he has in between, you know, there's a lot that can be accomplished. And sure, I'll learn heads up, no limit hold'em a lot better over those 23 days as well, but it's diminishing returns comparatively speaking, right? Like, he'll close the gap far more, even if I'm continually getting better, just based off the fact that, like, you know, this guy was c-betting 100% of flops on day one.
Yeah.
It's like,
and there's a learning curve, right?
Right.
Like,
right. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty steep learning curve, and the things that you're going to learn out of the gate are going to negate a lot of the edge that I potentially had. So, I mean, you know, it's like one sick weekend may have saved him 6 figures in EV.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fucking nice whenever you're the one out there calling someone a scammer and a fraud, touting your ability to come in and mop the fucking floor with him.
Yeah, it's a tough one because EV isn't quantifiable in that way. So it's just kind of speculating and guessing of how much money is being saved.
Well, it's just a matter of like guessing what my win rate was now versus what it will be once we're both a little more trained up.
Right. If you could put this in real dollar amounts, and let's just say the number was somewhere between 50 and 100K, people would be a lot more receptive to the idea of this is really fucked.
Yeah.
But because that's not necessarily even true to begin with,
right?
It's just, oh, you're making excuses, and he's accepted all your terms and you've accepted none of his. And that's kind of not the point, because the spirit of the bet was, you suck at poker, you're a scammer, I'm going to beat you in heads up, no limit, and I'm going to show how bad you are. And now it's, okay, we're going to play once in 23 days, and hopefully I can get a little bit better.
Right. Right. And it's, yeah, I mean, you know.
Poor form, if you will.
It is what it is, man. This guy was getting fucking slaughtered. ChatGPT apparently has caught wind of this. My man Beruizy out there asked ChatGPT to write a script about the Airball Berkey matchup. And I got to tell you, it's fucking good.
Everybody's talking about Berkey and Airball. But I was curious what artificial intelligence thinks about this, right? We got this picture, right? Like, everyone knows what this is about. I just had this random thought that Berkey looks like this jacked light bulb. Nick Airball is obviously just this like trash talking shitstorm. In my head, he's just a turd NATO. I was like, all right, this is the nicknames I'm gonna give these guys. And I'm gonna go ask ChatGPT to write me a script. And I specifically said, write me a poker drama script about a jacked light bulb and a turd NATO. It shouldn't get much attention, but ends up captivating a whole community due to boredom before World Series 2023. This is the result. It's truly unbelievable. It basically predicts what happened. It's just a bot that's creating the script. My favorite part from this, Berkey at one point says, I'll raise a light bulb. And then Turdnado replies with, I'm gonna raise a turd. It's so accurate. I mean, I'm gonna put the whole script. You guys can check it out and see for yourself. This is truly something else.
All right, I was just gonna post the script, but I actually think it's worth reading. And initially, my instinct said this is Conrad's moment to shine.
Well, I have to read something. Where is it?
But I've thought better. So here it is. Fade in. We're in the poker room during the day. The atmosphere is tense as players anxiously wait for the World Series of Poker 2023 to start. But in one corner of the room, there are two players who seem to be generating quite a buzz. Jacked light bulb, a muscular man in his early 30s, is seated across from Turdnado, a disheveled-looking man in his late 40s. They are playing a game of Texas Hold'em, but there's something different about this game. The other players at the table look bored, but then something happens that catches their attention. Jacked light bulb to Turdnado. You know what? I'll raise you. My light bulb. Turdnado confused. What? Jacked light bulb grinning. My light bulb. It's worth more than your chips anyway. The players start to murmur, wondering what's going on. The other player... Oh, wait. I just read that. Turnado mockingly. Sure, why not? I'll see your light bulb and I'll raise you my turd. The other players gasp in disgust. Jack light bulb amused. Your what? My turd. The one I dropped in the bathroom earlier. It's worth more than your light bulb anyway. Ishan, go retrieve my turd.
Damn, bro.
The other players can't believe what they're hearing. They start to gather around the table, curious to see how this will play out. Jack light bulb. Fine, I'll call your turd. Let's see what you've got. Turnado reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small plastic bag containing his turd. The other players recoil in disgust, but Jack light bulb seems unfazed. All right, let's see if my light bulb can beat your turd. The game continues with Jack light bulb and Turnado betting their unique items alongside their chips. The other players can't help but watch, transfixed on the absurdity of the situation. As the game goes on, the bets get higher and higher. Jack Lightbulb raises with his car keys. Turnado calls with his dirty underwear. The other players can't believe what they're seeing, but they can't look away either. Finally, the game comes to an end. Jack Lightbulb and Turnado reveal their cards, and the crowd erupts in cheers. Jack Lightbulb smirking. Looks like my lightbulb beats your turd. Turnado shrugging. Guess so. But hey, at least I didn't lose my dignity. I mean...
that's... pretty accurate.
This is the future of blockbuster cinema for sure.
Good thing nobody listens to this podcast.
I mean, if you're out there, I think we just found the script for Rounders 2.
Yep.
I think this is it. Tornado needs to go down the same way KGB burned.
Yep.
There's no pivot off of this.
No.
We're just stuck here for the rest of the show.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
We're right in Tornado land from now until the end of time. So the match will continue, I guess, Saturday. Me and Tornado will be battling it out for 6.5 hours. I mean, at a minimum, I guess I'm going to push to try to lengthen the session. Maybe try to get it to be like 10 hours if possible. I don't know. We need to do something. I need to get these fucking hours in while this guy still stinks. That like a Tornado, if you will. Moving on to some other news that popped off. See, Connie's out there in the Twitter streets. He's got an opinion on some things.
What day?
This was
and was it sent before 9 a.m.?
It was not. This was yesterday, and you and I had a brief conversation about it, and I was kind of like, I see their point, and then the one and only GOAT, Phil Galfond, dropped his 2 cents and basically echoed yours.
I know. I saw that. I was like, ooh, I'm on the right path here. Well, I don't know, actually. Yeah, so I put out a tweet the other day about the San Antonio thing.
Yeah, so to catch everybody up on what he's referring to, there was a card house in San Antonio Palace, and they had a bad beat jackpots, unclear for how much, where quads lost to a straight flush. And they nullified the bad beat because A, the hand was exposed before all action was complete. Number 2, the player with the losing hand did not say call verbally or with emotion. And number 3, the player saw he had a losing hand after he was shown the exposed card, then pushes his chips in. We want to express the importance of abiding by the house rules while maintaining the integrity of the game promotion. You don't like that.
I sat on it for a day and a half.
And then
I blew up.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Because I thought about it. So, like, this is like a weird situation because it's not a casino. Like, it's a card room. So it's a very house game type of vibe. Like, I went around and thought about this again last night. Like, it's a very house game type of vibe. So, like, when there's a scenario where quads is never folding.
Right.
Like, quads is absolutely 100% never folding. And all he did was flip over his cards and then push the money forward. He doesn't need to say call. Like, that is a call.
Right.
He calls 100%. He's like, holy shit, we just hit it. It's like, so to me, the only way that, like, the only reason for not paying them out is if the money wasn't on hand, or they just want to keep their promoting their bad beat to get some more
action.
Some more action in the room.
Yeah, Galfond kind of echoed the same sentiments, basically saying like Quads is never folding. This is an obvious must-pay situation. I don't want to speculate as to why they didn't pay.
Me neither, but
I mean, you just did. But
I'm here.
Honestly, it's reasonable speculation, I think. You should, as a casino house, you should be you're encouraged to pay these promotions out, right?
Of course.
Outside of the fact that they are assuming that they're in an interest-bearing account, which I don't know if they're segregating funds or not. I don't know if they're, I don't know their business. Basically,
man, nobody segregates funds.
Well, if we're talking about a casino, like if we're actually talking about a casino, this would be on the up and up. Now, my immediate pushback was, at casinos, they're pretty strict about this type of shit.
Yeah,
and they'll go to the cameras. Like I used to play at Red Rock way back in the day, like 2009 and 2010. And if you were at a bad beat qualifying table, like you technically weren't allowed to speak about it, but they left it up to the dealers to police it, and the dealers know they're getting a fat tip, so they kind of didn't care. Mm-hmm. But like you couldn't go so far as to say like I have a qualifier, let's check down, type of stuff. And they would police that kind of stuff. I'm not sure how a casino would rule here. My instincts are that they would pay it out.
So apparently there was a lot of people in that the comments saying that this happened in Red Rock or something like that, and then the players sued
the casino.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
won.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty reasonable, right? Like, sure, they have TOCs, but whenever you're putting in stipulations there that just seem like loopholes to not give money back to the people who are paying in, it does feel like a bit of a trap. Yeah. And these bad beat jackpots, for what it's worth, are just like massive taxes to the small and mid stakes communities to begin with. So I'm a little less forgiving of a tiny card room in San Antonio, just because there is so much more room for it to be nefarious, right? Like there is so much more room for them not to have segregated funds.
100%.
There's so much more room for them to like, be a little light on the books this month and just like need this money for one. I'm not saying that's what happened, obviously, but I am saying that if anyone has the ability to show some grace to a situation like this, it's a small room, right? Because like these promotions are what bring people through the doors.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing because obviously the people not involved in the bad beat jackpot are probably happy that it wasn't hit. But imagine inserting yourself in that situation. Imagine being the guy with the straight flush, right? Where he just literally did nothing wrong. He assumed that the guy called, he tabled his hand, and now the guy with quads is like fucking him out of however many tens of thousands of dollars. You know what I mean?
It waddles like a bad beat. It quacks like a bad beat.
Oh no, where are we going?
And it has webbed feet.
What the fuck
Pay
is
the
happening?
Jackpot out from my man Lee Jones.
Okay. That was
You're trying to find it.
I mean, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, I guess. Yeah, all right. We're out on one, man. We're out on one.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like there's just too much. Like it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good, cuz it does not look good. I'm not a fan of it at all.
Yeah,
it seems like these people should be paid.
It's very nitpicky, right? Like it looks like they're trying to find a reason not to pay it out.
Yeah. And to the people that are in the comments saying rules are rules, please get the fuck out of my comments.
I mean, you do have to abide by guidelines.
There are certain rules in place, and they're there for a reason.
Yeah,
right. It just depends how transparent all of those rules are. And again, like we're talking about a small card room in the middle of nowhere, San Antonio. So it's like I was very hyper aware of the rules when I was at Red Rock because it's an establishment. They post everywhere. They talk about it at the table.
Right.
The floor people were talking. You know what I mean? Like, and there's a certain hierarchy. So it's like there's a poker room manager who hires floor people, who hires dealers, and like all of these people are aligned in the same sort of like conveying the message to the consumer. Right. We're talking about small card room in San Antonio, man. Like there isn't going to be a big separation between the owners and the people that are dealing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I think in good faith, like this is one of those ones where you don't even take the L. It's not like this is money out of your pocket.
The problem is there's too much like, I guess like space for the bad beat to be skimmed. Like there's no overseeing body.
I agree with you that,
and this is even in casinos.
Well, no, they have promotional. I mean, yeah, you're right. There's no overseeing body, but like the corporation itself oversees these departments, right? So like, bad beat jackpots go into promo money.
Yeah.
And what they do with that is obviously up to some white collar guy who's overseeing that type of stuff. But there is checks and balances, you would assume, in most big corporations. Your point is very valid, though, that when you're talking about a small card room in San Antonio, there probably doesn't seem to be any of this, right? This just like becomes petty cash almost.
There's just a box in the back with a bunch of cash in it waiting to be divvied out.
Right. And also
Maybe
it's
not that simple, but
it's probably it's probably lacking transparency too, right? I doubt that they have like, well, even in casinos, it's like we don't know necessarily how much they're actually taking for these bad beats.
Yeah, and
we just kind of trust that the number's accurate.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's gonna skim too. Like there's like some middle of America casino.
There's a lot greater punishment if corporations are skimming off of their promotion money in a casino. Like there's actual, Nevada gaming that they have to report to and are overseen by. That's not the case in San Antonio. And that's a problem.
Are successful card rooms the ones that are willing to break the rules?
Perhaps. But I think to that point, whatever comes of this, in my opinion, I think these small unregulated rooms running promotions like this are just kind of like bad looks to begin with. Just due to the lack of transparency, the lack of oversight, all of these things, and now it's an additional rake to your consumer base, right? Because they're paying time there.
Yeah.
So they don't need to lose $1 a drop or whatever the fuck they're doing to take this out. Now it's different if you're just offering a free roll. If you just say like, hey, come play here and we're paying out $1,000 to Aces Full being beat just straight out of their pockets, way different, right? Like now if you want to be super strict about the rules, like, okay, I'm not going to fault you quite as much because this is coming out of your pocket and you don't really want to pay it.
I'm kind of curious on like how the bad beat was like promoted. Like, did it start off just like they put up 100K and then they're collecting it until they
we
reach
obviously
100K?
Don't know. I highly doubt it.
I mean, that would honestly, I would think that'd be the most likely just because of the fact that like it's at $100,000.
Yeah.
So it's not over 100K. It's not like it's 100,000.
Is that what the promo was?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see that.
Maybe
so
you start collecting first, and then till you get to a certain point, and then after that, then you announce it, and then you fill the rest of it the way in.
And like I know there's competition down there, so like if that could have been a good promo to get people in the door. Like,
it's pretty tough.
I know Rounders has a pretty.
All right, Joey,
lock.
get on the case. Find out if there was actually a bad beat jackpot. We need you on the case. Somebody in San Antonio needs to let us know.
Somebody is telling me right now that guy that runs Poker Palace has a questionable past.
Yeah, big shout out to E who's out there.
Lots of people in the area have talked about him being pretty scummy, trying to get a hard confirmation.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to drag anybody without any further information or anything like that, but like, from a speculative standpoint, it does just seem like it doesn't pass the smell test. So I think that, as a community, it's on us to do due diligence and like find out how probable it is that this is all fugazi.
Have there been situations in the past where card room makes ruling, community has outrage, card room changes it?
I'm sure at some point.
Well, it's tough with casinos because they're just abiding by Nevada gaming in most instances. There was like the Venetian protest where they were doing something really fucked. I can't remember what it was, but basically they were taking like promo dollars and running tournaments in some regard. And I can't remember how the money was being paid in or like what the tournament was, but I just remember that the final structure of it when it was all said and done was like anybody playing the tournament was basically losing money or something to that effect. They did something really fucked with the payouts.
This was a while ago?
Yeah, like they were pulling from the prize pool or something. Like maybe it was like a $300 buy-in. And they were supposed to be adding money from like the promotional money or whatever the case may be. But the way that they did the payout system, like almost like a Survivor or something like that. Again, I don't remember. So like I'm really riffing here. I just remember that people really protested very hard against this because one, Venetian's rake is already the highest in Vegas when it comes to low and mid stakes. And then two, they were taxing all of their cash game players this bad beat drop or whatever, and then they were taking it and throwing it into. Yeah. That's
Wait,
what it was.
What the fuck was this?
That's what it was. It was a 100K guarantee, and every single entrant there after the guarantee became rake. Just 100% rake. None of the money went to the prize pool. So if it was like $1,000 buy-in and 100 people played, everyone from 101 and beyond just went to the house.
What? Why was this?
I don't remember. It definitely had something to do with the bad beat jackpot, but I don't recall what or like how. And obviously it was a small buy-in. It wasn't a 1K.
Yeah.
Probably something along the lines of if you played enough hours in cash, you got a seat to it.
Yeah, perhaps.
And then you can just buy into it straight or
Perhaps.
something.
But yeah, I remember I think it ended up overlaying slightly because people were protesting it.
Yeah, that got removed pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. There are some bad ideas, but like, ones like that just are pretty overt that they're trying to take advantage.
Yeah, there should be like a good idea, bad idea counseling. I say this all the time. Before you do something, you should think, is it a good idea or a bad idea? And if it's a bad idea, you don't want to do it. Like this tournament, bad idea.
Yeah.
That was an easy bad idea.
Yeah. That was a very easy bad idea.
There's always been like this whole rake issue though when it comes to poker sites and things along those lines.
What an incredible
Well, I do
segue.
something.
Why
Landon.
do you have to fucking smirch it?
No, what do you mean? I was giving you your
I
props,
didn't need
bro.
it.
That
I was the unsung hero,
No,
and then
that
you made
was
me
so
sing.
good.
Then you
God,
made me
that
the
was
song.
so good, man. That was so good. What a
Hate
great
it.
transition. We are joined today by a high stakes poker pro who mostly plays online. I'm going to give you a description of a DM I received actually describing George prior, because I think it's just like the perfect way to describe it. George does a ton for high stakes community behind the scenes. He's done the lion's share of the work for the GG negotiations, shouldering thousands of different opinions, sometimes from difficult to deal with high stake pros. Does it all for free while running his CFP and also playing. He's also one of the more active vocal guys looking out for cheaters across the sites. He's basically the people's champ for high stakes regs behind the scenes. Helps with a lot of low stake guys too. I've had a few encounters with George on Twitter, mostly regarding like RTA and things of that nature. And he's always been like super respectful, seems to really have the best interests of the community in mind. So I'm really happy to bring him in here today. BBZ coach George, you mad bro?
Bit B. George Froggat.
Oh, Froggat. Okay. Sorry, I didn't know
I think
his
it's
last
Bit
name.
B, but anyways.
Oh, it is it?
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah.
My bad. My apologies.
Welcome.
No worries. And you missed the most important thing that I'm famous for, which has been make boyfriend's roommate, I think.
Oh, well, that does make a hell of a lot of sense. So you guys just got, wow, I kind of want to dig into that before we get into all the rake stuff. You guys kind of just came up in the game together?
He was already up in the game, and then we moved into a flat together in Vienna like 3-4 years ago, I guess now.
Okay.
And yeah, obviously he probably helped me more than I helped him, I would say, honestly, in that time.
I mean, fair, but two pretty brilliant poker minds living together. You guys are bound to find success. Is he still grinding on like the high stakes and stuff?
Yeah. He still plays nosebleeds on all sites, PLO and No Limit, I think, at the very high stakes. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the high stakes scene then as it exists. What I mean, obviously I know, but like, let's catch the audience up a little bit. What led to this boycott of GG, and how difficult or easy was it to coordinate the high stakes community?
Yeah, sure. So for anyone who doesn't know, GG had the vast majority of the high stakes action on kind of the open networks. They would like regularly have 5-6 tables of 5K NL plus running, as well as like the really massive games, 100K NL and 40K NL. And they definitely didn't have a monopoly on this. Like ACR has like a lot of high stakes action as well. But yeah, GG charged much higher rake, like you guys can see in the chart there already. The left-hand column was their old rake structure, which was about 10x the competitors, slightly less. And then about a week ago, overnight, they kind of released an update in the client on April the 1st, actually. Everyone obviously was hoping it was April Fool's, but transpired it wasn't, where they basically just doubled the rate cap at all stakes. And it basically pushed like the games, especially at 5K now, to the level where they just weren't beatable anymore. Like the vast majority of seats would be losing. And yeah, people just didn't know about it. Like gradually the community kind of told each other, like, yeah, in case you didn't know, the rake has been doubled to this level. And kind of took a bit of back and forth about whether it was realistic to kind of for everyone to commit to not play. And it quickly became clear it was basically because the opportunity cost of not playing is so low when the games available to you are not beatable anyway for any kind of win rate. And I think quite quickly about 90, almost 100 people signed up to agree to not play. I think there's actually basically 4 or 5 regulars who are still playing. Otherwise, the games are only recreationals. And yeah, basically that's what's been happening for the last week. No professionals or regular players playing GG at least.
Right. So the rake, as that graph kind of dictated, basically all but doubled at 5K NL, going from 4 big blinds per 100 to 7.08. What was the rake at like 10K and above, or maybe like looking at like 20K and 100K? Because I imagine that's where GG has enough whales that could be where it's still attractive for certain players to play. Basically, are they beatable at this current hike?
Yeah, so basically the way that myself and my friends used to think about it was that under the old structure, 5K was kind of like the idiot stake, like the stake where under the old rake structure, you could like occasionally find a good seat, but the vast majority of seats were like dubious or losing, or at least not winning a high enough rate that you would want to play them really. And then 10K plus is where it started to get like realistic. And then under the new structure, 10K kind of became the same as the old 5K rake, slightly higher, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then 20K plus is still beatable, but the rake is still under the after the hike is still like completely ridiculous compared to other sites. And there will definitely be games running where there would be like a recreational player playing, and you wouldn't necessarily want to play them. And any kind of battling between professionals is like completely unrealistic with. Right. Well, honestly, even with the old rake structure, it was not great at any stake. But with the new rake structure, it like really disincentivizes like playing heads up or free-handed, really.
So the win rates at these stakes now, because of the price hike, is just almost too unattainable. And while some of the seats may be good, it's very possible that you're just overestimating win rate in a lot of spots, which just makes it unbeatable as is.
Yeah, exactly. I think even before the hike, someone posted the data about the biggest losing players on GG, and there was like 15 professionals in there. I mean, even from my own experience, I think I played a lot of volume in like games before I really registered just how much money was leaving the table every 100 hands under the old structure.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, sorry. I remember looking at rake attributed as a stat on PT4, and you really don't realize how much money you're giving away to rake until you see it over a long period of time.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you really put it into big blind per 100 as well, and you like compare it to win rates, like for anyone watching who's not familiar, like online, if you have like a 4 or 5 big blind win rate, it's good on like EU websites. And then you think like you've got 5 big blinds leaving the table, 4.x big blinds leaving the table every 100 hands in rake. It's just so you have to win so much to kind of be left with a lot, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think
afterwards.
I think in a big way, this speaks a lot to the mid-stakes and low-stakes players who grind it out live, because the live rakes are astronomical. You know, in a 1-3 game, you could be losing upwards to 2 big blinds, 2.5 if you're playing like 1-2 per hand. And of course, live is slow, but like, you know, they're basically taking a full buy-in off the table like every 45 minutes or every hour, something along those lines. But it's super beatable because everybody's so bad that win rates are, you know, astronomical. You can literally see 30, 40 big blinds per 100. That's not going to be the case in a competitive environment, as George is kind of mentioning. Why GG? Why haven't you guys migrated to stars and ACR? And I mean, I kind of understand the answer behind this, but what about GG makes it so unique to the high stakes player pool?
Yeah, I think that there are just more recreational players on GG Poker, basically. They've done a really, really good job with like promotions. The software is way more enjoyable. Like if I was play recreational, I would definitely not play anywhere else. Mm-hmm. It's way easier to get money on and off the website, which I think is maybe the key thing. And they do have a rake back structure, which gives more rake back to recreational players,
right.
Which there's a lot, I've got to be careful what I say here because there's a lot of debate in the high stakes community, but the one thing you can't argue about is that it definitely generates more volume.
Right.
Because obviously the recreational players have more money to play with. So yeah, the playing experience basically and the ease of transacting on the website.
So basically, we're holding your feet to the fire that you just said more rake is better.
Yes. I mean, I don't want to.
No,
get too much into this because it's so split. But yeah.
No, I'm fucking with you. Obviously,
there's some pros behind what they do for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the casinos are notorious for this, right? Like, you get big whales who come in and gamble in the pits. A lot of them will offer rebates. Come play Baccarat with us. We'll give you 15% of your losses back. Things of that nature. On top of all the comps and things like that. So giving a greater rake back incentive to the people that are basically the game starters, which are going to be the recreationals, seems to be worth a lot. How does this parallel to what we saw with the stars, I believe it was 2015 or 16, with the elimination of Supernova Elite and what effectively turned into a rake increase there?
Yeah, so I think what stars did actually is probably just worse. So PokerStars basically let people grind Supernova Elite, which would take a full year of playing like crazy volume at most stakes. And the year after you finish Supernova Elite, you got higher rake back. And what Stars basically did is they said, we're cutting Supernova Elite, which obviously was within their rights to do, but we're also cutting the higher rake back for the people who've just played the whole year with the anticipation of getting that. And then there was a big sit out. Like I think in this case, actually, people didn't play and they also blocked the tables. Like they would sit at the table and sit out. And if someone sat and wanted to play, they'd be like, we're not playing, here's why. The Stars didn't like this. But I would say as well, quickly, so yeah, GG obviously are within their rights to charge what they want for their product. But obviously in this case, I would say they've misstepped quite badly just because they pushed the games beyond what's sustainable and also to such a degree that the community can like react in a united way and cause GG to make less net revenue. But I will also say that the GG have already reached out and like entered into negotiations, which is one thing Stars never did. And obviously Stars lost their monopoly as a result. So maybe in this case, depending on how things kind of finalize, you could say that GG are kind of moving in the right direction in that regard.
Yeah, it seems like a very normal thing for business to make a change and then get the feedback. And in this case, the regulars, if you will, are giving them the feedback of this is not sustainable. And it's always about finding that middle line between what GG can maximize for profit while keeping games beatable and enjoyable. So it's a matter about finding that middle ground where clearly they overstepped in this one at this current time.
Yeah, and I would genuinely say like for like poker as a whole, it's been like a huge, I think like because of this change they've made, like the poker community has become a lot more educated about rake, right? Like hopefully some people listening to this will like rethink some games they're playing as well. And in the past, I used to think this was kind of a big edge for like my stable or whatever, where like we would like really have a hyper focus on rake and be like the amount of money leaving the table is like the gravity of the situation. Like you need to know how much this is to know if the game is playable or not. And I thought it was like something to keep secret because it was like some kind of edge we had. But actually, I've realized like the more that like the players know, like whether it's a recreational player or a professional player, about like rake structures and what they mean for like the sustainability, the beatableness, made up word, but sure, of the game, the better, right? So like the more we can kind of educate everyone on being like, this is the gravity, like this is how much money is leaving the table, the less the sites are going to be able to just push how much they take in future. And like, yeah, there's been some really good educational content put out already by like Patrick Howard on this, I think, since the boycott started. Obviously, hopefully this has got like a lot of eyes on it as well. So yeah, from that point of view, I think it's probably a bit of a misstep by them because they kind of did something which caused all our customers to become so much more educated on the rake.
So there's a couple directions I want to take this. I'll double back to the communication that you've had with GG in a moment. But before we get to that, I kind of want to ask a little bit. Outside of obviously trying to collect more money, do you think that there's a bigger purpose behind GG's desire to continually increase the rake? Because obviously this is the second hike that we've seen, and they were already 10x their competitors, yet still having a stranglehold on the volume necessary to run high stakes. Do you feel like there is something deeper here, maybe as a company, to abolish high stakes or make it so that it is only recreationals who are willing to play with one another? Anything along those lines?
Yeah, there's actually a few avenues to put this down. Like answering the second part of your question first, like, do they want to make it so only recreationals play against each other? From a strictly revenue point of view, like people I speak to who are like in the industry and just like basic calculations, I'm pretty convinced that like from a rake point of view, if you're a website and you're trying to make as much rake as possible, you don't want games which are like free recreationals, free professionals. You kind of want it to either be like six recreationals all playing one table, or one recreational and 5 professionals, because obviously if you've got 3 recreationals and you could have 3 different tables running, you want the rake set at the exact level which makes 3 tables run for 3x the volume. So it's a long-winded way of saying I don't think it's realistic for an open website to have games which are all recreationals. So normally I would assume they want to set the rake at a level where like it is kind of this like leveraging their VIPs to the maximum to get as many tables, as many raked hands running as possible. So yeah, I don't think that they're trying to like get rid of all professionals from the site, particularly because of how like they have actually been very good at giving us feedback and like reacting to some of the demands, some of the things we've asked them to. It doesn't really imply to me that's the avenue they want to go down. And then the same for killing high stakes. Like I don't think they want to, or they wouldn't be like making the concessions they've already made. And besides that, I think like it's kind of clearly good to have like these Linus sitting like playing these 100 KNL tables and stuff like this. Like it's just free marketing for them in a lot of ways. And like the rake efficiency, which they often talk about, like how, again, if we're strictly talking about maximizing profit for the poker websites, these games aren't that bad for them. Like especially at 5K now, I think they make like as much as they would make from tournaments, and like it's not like the players who might play 5K now will go and play 100 now where they can make better rate from them. You know, this is like a unique player base which they have access to. So yeah, I'm too optimistic, but I think it's just an error, honestly. Okay. Or an overstep.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess I was kind of posturing that, you know, if you have this collection of whales who are either willing to play against only each other, that's, as you mentioned, very good for the site, or if higher stakes didn't exist and they were now willing to infiltrate, say, the 2K NL pool, the 1K NL pool, I would assume GG's rake is basically the same per player there, unless they have a different structure that I'm unaware of, but most are capped at $3 per hand, right? Or is that not the case with them?
I think so. So after they made the change, the rake at 1K now is now the same at 5K now. But 1K now has this massive leaderboard system where they give like a lot of money back every day. Okay. So it's actually effectively lower. So you're moving players from 5K to 1K doesn't even benefit their bottom line in the current structure. And just one more thing to add is that like a lot of these recreationals that we're talking about on GG are like they're not like whales. They're players who are like winning a lot in live games, particularly in Asia, and like playing like much higher live and using like the 5K, 10K games for practice, as ridiculous as that sounds.
No, yeah, of course.
So again, they're not players who are just move or like play something else. I think in a lot of the cases, well, obviously there are some whales as well, but there's a lot of these like live pros that play for practice, I think.
Yeah. You mentioned some concessions that they were willing to bend to. So obviously you have been in communication with some of the higher ups at GG. Can you speak a little bit to what you hope to accomplish through the boycott? Like what the list of player demands are, what they're willing to concede, what they're not budging on, things of that nature?
Yeah, so I don't want to like, we basically have had like, we kind of made what we said what we would want to end the boycott. GG came back with an offer. We said what we're not happy with about the offer, and then they came back with a new offer, and we're reviewing that today. I think basically like it's difficult for us as professionals to argue that, it's difficult for us to argue that the rate should be lower than it was initially, because there was such a high volume of games running initially. Right. The only thing we can use in our favor there is, like I said, like the community is just better educated than they were 1 week ago on the kind of how high that rake actually is. But yeah, mostly it's to get the rake back to what it was. And then we're talking a lot as well with the GG representative. I'm not sure if he wants to be named, so I'll just avoid it for now. Sure. About the short-handed rake, because obviously like everyone talks about not wanting poker to be predatory. I would obviously also rather it wasn't predatory. But like, if you have a rake structure, which means that you can't win playing against another professional, no professionals are going to play against each other.
Right, games just die.
Exactly, yeah. And GG does have a lower rake cap for short-handed games, 2 to 3-handed, but it was still like so high that you can't really justify playing heads up or free-handed unless you think you're way, way, way better than someone, in which case the table's probably going to fill around them anyway.
Right.
So yeah, we talked a lot about this because this is like organic volume, which GG just doesn't have, and they could have. Like ACR has it all. There's like a lot more battles running on ACR because the rate's so much lower there between professionals. So I felt this should be like a really easy sell to the business. It's like professionals will play against each other 1v1 if you make the rake low enough. You never have the danger of a recreational playing heads up against a professional, because when that player joins, the table is going to go 6-handed anyway. And they have said they'll reduce the rake a lot, still nowhere near to the level though that like will actually incentivize people playing against each other, in my opinion.
Right.
So yeah, that's something we're really trying to get changed as well. Basically, like 6-handed rake back to the old system, and then lower short-handed rake, heads-up rake down to levels where you can see like these big matches, professional versus professional, which at the moment largely happen on other networks or in crossbook games.
It's kind of a new perspective where the community as a whole, at least in your case for the higher stakes community, rake used to be something that people just had this idea of it is what it is and it will never change. It's part of the system, where now you guys are taking a step further and saying, okay, this has now gotten to a point where it's definitely out of hand. And the only way this changes is if we as a community, at least as a whole, start to make a change ourselves.
Yeah. Have you leveraged this opportunity with the boycott to kind of position the high stakes community to make greater demands of sites like Stars and ACR?
Yeah, we think about it. So the reason that everyone's in a group together actually is because initially we made this group to kind of work on the RTA front. We basically thought it's just a benefit if we have like all the kind of known vouched regs in one chat and like have a vouch system where people can get added and we kind of compile reports to send to websites. And actually kind of off topic, but actually had reasonable success there talking to the sites and getting like the most obvious cheating accounts banned on ACR and GG. Through some of the reps. The basic problem is that like ACR there are some problems with the site, obviously, but like the rake is good. The games are good. And like for me personally, the software isn't as good as GG, but it's fine. And then Stars has this like problem where just at high stakes there is no games because no one can get money on the website, right? Even professionals. Yeah. So yeah, but like having this avenue in GG will be good, and I think like Landon said about the rake, there has been some worrying trends with rake online where like sites seemed to kind of realize because GG was charging so much that they thought they could charge more as well. Like for people listening, I guess Bet Online, the Chico network is a good example for this. They like 3x the cap, I think, at 1K very recently. Like really massive increase of rake there. On Chico, and like obviously just kind of like increasing the customer sensitivity to rake increases is going to be like good for preventing sites just ramping up the rake to the maximum in future, I think, hopefully.
I'm glad you brought up the RTA thing. I have a note here that I wanted to kind of take the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about. We've had some exchanges in the past on Twitter when the Fedor Cruz stuff dropped, when the Ali and Jake stuff dropped. Maybe we might have then as well. And I just recall you kind of assuring me that this is definitely not an issue at high stakes. And I think I just kind of shrugged it off a little bit of like, well, you're one of the best players out there. It probably doesn't feel like much of an issue to you because you're beating the game anyway. But I think I've come around to understand a little bit better with how small the community is and how well coordinated you guys are. This truly probably is very self-policed and you're doing a great job of it. Do you feel that that's possible in the other stakes, like as you start to dip down to 2K and below? Or do you feel like there is still some sort of threat as technology grows and these sites aren't necessarily keeping up?
Yeah, I think like it's always a dilemma because like you said, I think the one thing that I've always thought is quite clear is that actual high stakes nosebleed, like sure, some people are going to try and cheat. The opportunity cost of cheating and getting away with it is so high because if you're not a known account and you come up and start winning, you will be investigated like a lot. And it's difficult to get away with it. If you are a known account and you decide, I'm going to start cheating, you're like forfeiting like hundreds of thousands of EV a year by doing so.
Which we've literally seen, a handful of accounts make that sacrifice.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And like, I'm not going to say there's like no one cheating, but like, it's nowhere near the problem that like maybe the public perception perceives it to be. And also like all the biggest edges, even in the nosebleed games, like I'm not playing them myself at the moment, but my roommates are, and my housemates are, sorry, and some of my close friends are. Like the biggest edges don't come from like playing like a bot anyway. They come from like lots of other kind of stuff, like I guess you could call it real poker if you want.
Sure.
The way that like Marcus and Linus are playing to generate EV. But yeah, sorry, that's a roundabout way of your question. I think like at small stakes, it's much harder to police because of the volume of accounts. I think if sites decided they really didn't care about detecting RTA, there would be a problem because like, yeah, if you're in a country where the average income is low and the sites don't care, you can generate your like 30, 50K a year because of the recreationals. However, the sites, like most cheaters are still stupid playing these stakes. And I think they get caught like pretty consistently still.
Yeah, I think that's the general overarching concern, I guess, from the population is that, it all started with the botting that was taking place on ACR. And as technology's grown, we realize like how much more efficient those bots can be now, just utilizing even pre-solved databases like GTO Wizard or Odin and the sort. And granted, the best players out there will kind of look at those products and say like, well, they're not good enough to really win not good enough not to win. That's not true. They're not good enough to be elite whenever you start to raise the ranks. But to your point, that's not really what people in Belarus are looking for. They're just trying to fire up a machine that will play 24/7, 365 for them and print a few bucks an hour in EV and really never have to look back, Yeah,
I agree. I think like at small stakes and mid stakes, where there's like this massive player base, it is more of a problem. I don't like, again, I know I was listening actually to your RTA podcast earlier when I was on a run actually. And I'm going to come back with the same response, which is like, don't really want to say how I would do it if I was a website, because
of course,
I know that some of the sites are already doing that. And I think the key point is basically that your chances of getting caught are just quite high. And like when you get caught and lose your entire deposit, as long as this standard like keeps being there, I think that like the problem is not going to be as huge as it is. And then the other thing is about these small stakes is there are like many more recreational players playing now. So like a few cheaters who do get away with it will not be as much of a problem to like whether the games are beatable.
Right.
I think though.
Right. They still remain sustainable in spite of the fact that, basically we have some outlier winners who don't belong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, that's why I said, I think if the sites gave up, it would be problematic, but like, and that's why I think like holding the sites accountable to like, it is so important basically, because they need to realize that like, it's important for the future of poker that they actually care about doing the basic things and catching the stupid guys basically.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
No, go ahead.
It's never about, at least from the player perspective, because we know that rake is always going to exist and is a necessary evil of the game and for sites to do their job. So it's just a matter of having that in the back of their mind as a company and seeing it more as an infinite type of game of having games being played versus how much money can we take from the ecosystem before people get mad. I guess that's how you guys kind of see it.
Yeah, I think it's just like, it's like, I think this rake increase is a much bigger threat to online poker being like a game you can win at than the RTA is basically. And yeah, I think like we have to like make sites realize that like increasing the rake, basically I think when GG increases the rake this much, so they like almost 2x the structure, if it makes them have half the games, it's not like a net benefit for them, right? And the way it will make them have half the games is if regs realize that it's been doubled and they won't play anymore unless like the game's like really, really good, right? So that's
Also-
why I think like the education is so important. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. It's like with the rakeback system that they do have in place too, where they give more benefit to losing players long term. It's also tough for people that are trying to play consistently to get the same sort of benefit or reward, and it just won't end up happening. So while the money does kind of go back into the ecosystem because recreational players get more of it, there's nothing to be said for someone to just stop playing as a whole.
Yeah, it just goes back in
dip.
for you to potentially win again, right? Like you win it, and then they rake it, and then you potentially just win it back again from the same player that you wanted from to begin with because you got the kickback.
Yeah, effectively, I guess. Yeah. And like this, I don't know if you guys ever played GT, but the system is it's not transparent at all. So like it says in the client that you get 60% rake back, but then your rake back is multiplied by your player value indicator. And like it can go as low as like 0.1, so you could be getting 6% rake back instead.
Oh wow.
And I believe for like recreational as well, I know for myself when I had my biggest downswing it got back to 1. So I assume that for actual recreational players it can go significantly above 1. So like the variance is very, very big, and like yes, it's like the transparency. Like I can definitely see an argument that like for the regular players they should know what their multiplier is. Although you can figure it out if you just play a session and see how much you get, basically.
Right.
And that's predicated on how much you're winning and how much you play as a whole. Yeah,
it's like murky. There's no one knows the formula. Like it definitely is stake by stake. So like you can have a wildly different value at different stakes. I think it also has something like how much action you give in there, because like myself and my friends who like played more heads up or free-handed tended to have higher ratios than others. There's like all kinds of wild theories, like how many emojis you use or how many cards you show.
It's like the YouTube algorithm. You know, people have ideas, but they don't have direct fact.
Exactly. Yeah. Like no one really knows. Yeah.
The amount of emojis you throw up in just one times, and all those increase your PVI.
This is kind of a bit of a slippery slope because what GG suddenly finds himself doing then is positioning themselves against the app games, which they were already in direct competition with. But now with the higher rake, you're basically reducing your player pool, as you kind of mentioned, to only recreationals. And a lot of those recreationals don't care about this type of stuff. So they are on apps and they're getting like pretty juicy deals there. That acquisition model is so scary to me because when you look at the apps, like they're completely unpoliced and the security there is just kind of a nightmare. You were kind of speaking to how when it gets shorthanded on GG, they give you a rake break, but not really that big of one. That's the same way app games are. Like, you know, you may be in a game where it's all recreationals and they're taking like 1.5 big blinds per hand. And whenever you get heads up, now it reduces to like a half a big blind per hand. But that's still astronomical if you're putting in any sort of volume, you know?
Yeah, like for me, these app games, I've played a bit. Again, I have friends who play a bit, but like, yeah, this is where the rate becomes like a real factor because there's so many more unknowns as well. Like, yeah, the games on average are softer, but like now you can have like collusion, which means you can win in a game against people who's nice here, but you can't win in a game where people are colluding.
Right.
And like, yeah, the rate can be like so high that like it's just very, very difficult to figure out if the players are bad enough for you to win or not. And yeah, like for recreational players, that like, I mean, they don't care about it, but it does matter to them as well. I think for like, yeah, how much money leaves the table every 100 hands is going to be a factor in how likely it is for them to go on massive heaters or have an enjoyable time as well, I guess.
Yeah, when their account's generally just declining and it's not even necessarily due to bad play, like that's going to show up in their radar, I think. Let me kind of get you out here on a bigger existential question as a whole. Do you think online poker is sustainable for the near future? Like, do you see there still being growth and sustainability in spite of all the threats that it faces?
Yeah, like I actually quit online poker. I think, well, quit poker full stop when I was like 22. I guess I'm 29 now. I like quit for a year, maybe 2 years, because I thought poker was dead, basically. I think like Pyrosolver came out or something. Maybe it was in Poker Snowy. It was like. And I just decided that like this was the end. Like I'd watched too many AI movies, I think.
Sure.
But nowadays I'm like much more optimistic in a lot of ways because I see like more where the EV comes from, and I realize it's not from like replicate. It's from like, you have to have a good idea of what equilibrium play looks like, but it's not from replicating equilibrium that you actually generate win rate. I think that also like online poker is like significantly bigger than it was like 4 years ago even. So like it's kind of on the ascendancy in a way. And then you have developments like this, like regardless of what happens from this boycott, it is pretty much confirmed it will be the first successful boycott in poker history where like we actually get the site to make some concessions. So like player power, you could argue, is increasing in that way. I think like American regulation obviously is like going to be like a whole new massive online poker market. Obviously the problem comes with stuff like ChatGPT and like not understanding like how developments in AI are gonna go. But like assuming it continues along the same path as it is currently, with like the cheating software being like these solution lookup things, I think online poker will be around for like a good while yet, especially with like the new influx of players coming when American regulation passes as well. And just the fact that like at the moment it's not even close. You know, there's like in all pools there's like people making like literal millions. So
right.
every year, and there's already like the software to cheat, quote unquote, out there. And it hasn't. It's been out there for years and years, and it hasn't like become widespread yet. And sites slowly seem to be getting smarter. Some networks quicker than others, but I'm maybe too optimistic, but I do believe it will still be there for years.
Well, even with the RTA stuff being sort of an issue, I guess when it comes to player pools everywhere, if rake does decrease, it does end up keeping the games around for longer. So it's kind of a good start.
Yeah, I think to your point of optimism, I'm a bit of a doomsdayer whenever it comes to online, but I do agree with you in a specific regard in that I do see there still being a lot of growth there, and I think ultimately what I previously may have seen as a total abolishment of online poker altogether, I may have been misguided there, and I actually think what will happen is there'll be some strong winners that come out of it. And what I mean by that is like rather than us having the options to play on 20 different sites or 30 different sites, all of which have different pros and cons to them, I think there's going to be like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 major networks that are in direct competition to each other. And that shouldn't be any surprise. We see this pretty much in all businesses, whether it's something as simple as like cable or something as competitive as like high-end car marketing. Like there tends to only be a few winners after something has been around long enough for it to mature.
Yeah. I think like the sites that like the problem is with like the game integrity side of things is you have to have scale to like justify the expenditure on it, right? So like naturally that kind of lends itself to like fewer bigger sites than like lots of small ones. Just one other thing I thought I'd add quickly. Just when I was listening to the RTA podcast, you guys were mentioning that when Fedor Cruz got banned, he said like everyone's doing it. Mm-hmm. I just thought I'd like address that because I think again, it's a common misconception. Like Fedor was like, I mean, obviously I'm a bit biased here, but he was not a smart guy. He was like using heads up sims to play, using 6-handed sims to play heads up against Stefan. For anyone who doesn't know, Stefan's like one of the best, you know. And like obviously the way he got caught was like fairly ridiculous as well. It is ridiculous it took as long as it did. But like prior to this, he like couldn't beat 50 NL. He was like couldn't move up the stakes at all. And like I think what he says is like partly to justify his own actions. He was like cheating in Call of Duty before for similar reasons, I think. And it's just genuinely not true that like the majority of people are cheating. And like again, if you look at the bit, like I said a lot, if you look at the biggest winners, they're the ones who play like in a way like the most different equilibrium,
right?
Online still, and yeah, it's just like if I sit down like on a random table on like the sketchiest network, it's still like extremely unlikely at a 6-handed table, I think, that I'll be suspicious of one of my opponents.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I think from our perspective, what was most bothersome was the methodology through which the RTAers were caught, be it Ali, Jake, or Fedor. It seemed like it took so long and that it flew under the radar for so long, in spite of the fact, like with Ali and Jake, we all knew for years. and it was like shouting into the void where nothing could really be done. But I'm a lot more optimistic seeing how swiftly everybody acted, and to see how much that cascaded into the live venues. The fact that these guys turned up at an EPT and got, turned away from the cage due to kind of being put on a blacklist, to me is a step in the right direction. I think that, if we're going to keep this a safe space moving forward, the penalty has to be so harsh, because the reward to not getting caught in short order is worth a lot. If you're able to get away with it for an extended period of time, not only do you make a lot of money, but you become really fucking good too. Like if Jake and Ali would have stopped being greedy at some point and just shut it all down and just played on their own laurels, they would have continued to be high stakes winners.
Yeah, 100%. I think what you said, it's so important as a community that we ostracize the people who are caught, basically. It's it all comes down to the opportunity costs, and some of it is the site, taking the money, but other in poker, your network is worth so much.
Yeah.
Online, live, whatever as well. It's gets you into random games. It allows you to sell action nosebleeds, super high rollers. This is one thing I've realized more and more as my career has progressed, is how the value of this network. And you have to make sure that anyone who does cheat just doesn't ever get this benefit.
Yeah.
I think it's part of what we can do as a community to help reduce help change the calculation basically for would-be cheaters.
Yeah, in certain industries, certain actions which should just require a death sentence. There's no real second chance for something like this. It's too well known how predatory it is, and how much money it can siphon out of the community, for us to just allow somebody to kind of claim ignorance and just be like, I didn't think it was that bad. It's 100%. At some point you just have to put your foot down and say no, enough's enough. You're not going to make money off our backs anymore.
Yeah, and also I will say this, the sites can still do better on this, particularly within our group. Obviously, the reason we made this anti-RTA group in the first place is because obviously a bunch of high stakes players or mid stakes players or whatever act on their own, they're going to accuse every single person of cheating,
right?
Along the way. So it's kind of a way to assimilate reports and actually do proper investigation with data or showdowns we were seeing to come to more definitive conclusions before we pass it onto the website. But there have definitely been cases, and there still are, of where we can be pretty much 100% sure that a certain account is cheating, and they do tend to get banned nowadays. It just takes longer than you would be ideal in a lot of circumstances. The sites still could definitely put more into the game integrity side of things. But hopefully for GG, assuming that eventually this boycott results in them changing the games to a more sustainable format, the fact that we have better connections now to the sites as well can help with that for sure.
Yeah, I think that that's one thing that probably in the last 5 years or so I've come to understand the most, as I kind of shift into the elder statesman in the community and whatnot, is those relationships with operators are just absolutely priceless. And for decades, or at least for a decade, I think there was very little communication between the consumer base and the actual operators, where that's very different now. With social media being what it is, with the high stakes regulars being able to, kind of collect themselves the way that you all have and organize, it makes us get heard now as consumers, and that's just priceless when it comes to shaping the product moving forward, ensuring security measures, making sure that this is sustainable, because at the end of the day, the incentives are a little bit disaligned between the professional and the operator, right? For both of us, we obviously want to make money, but if you don't have that infinite game mindset that Landon kind of spoke to before, and you have a lot more short-term vision, it's easy to go for the money grab, be it as a player or an operator. And if anybody is operating under those premises, they're going to end up being pretty destructive. So I think what you guys are doing is very commendable. I think you should be obviously very proud of yourself. It sounds like you're one of the hardest working men in high-stakes poker right now, juggling a lot of different things. Is there anything you want to mention that we haven't covered, or anything you want to plug or shout out?
No, I don't think so. Let me just check. I'll check the Discord group just in case people are watching and say anything as well. Doesn't look like anything important. Yeah, mostly I just want to say, firstly, thanks to you guys having it on, because obviously you have a huge amount of viewers who hopefully are interested. And definitely, like I said, the key thing that we really want to achieve as well is raise awareness. And like in the news, views, and gossip thread, which is an unfortunate place to spend time on 2+2, but
sure.
I've been trying to keep up with it.
Or just anywhere.
A lot of, yeah. There's a lot of people actually. I think the main account is the Nick Airball fan club, so it's topically relevant to you guys as well.
Sure.
But yeah, he's been saying like, oh yeah, like why should the rest of the industry care about what the high stakes players want, etc. Like I'd like them to get fucked. They're also predatory, blah blah blah. But yeah, like obviously all the high stakes players. Like I was playing small stakes 4 years ago. And like the reason I spend so much time on this is because I have a vested interest myself as well. Like I have like a small stable, I have players playing all websites, and if the precedent is that the sites can just put the rake up and the players don't react and just keep playing, it's like it's only going to end one way, right? Like GG have like spent loads of money on acquisitions. They've done all these overlay series, etc. They're like they've like tried to really capture the tournament market because that's where they believe the bulk of the recreational players are. Yeah. And at the moment, the tournament rake is low on other networks. But like, is it going to stay that way if players are completely like not sensitive to the pricing? So yeah, I don't think it's a case of like you shouldn't care about the high stakes recs because the high stakes community is the easiest to organize because it's the smallest. So if they kind of stand by and don't do anything, it's going to set awful precedents lower down the tree, I guess. So yeah, it's just my pitch to the Nick Airball fan club, I guess, or the 2+2 accounts that are mad.
I think you're spot on there. In this instance, change is going to come from the top, and that's true of our community, across the board. It's why Daniel has such a powerful voice when it comes to organizing the WSOP, and it's why you guys are going to be able to move the needle here at GG, I think. Yeah, and then the one last thing I'd like to add. I'm not going to say any names, obviously, but like I think for the GG reps, like I said, one person in particular, who I'm sure eventually I'll be able to mention publicly, has like gone above and beyond to help us. But like I understand that everyone has to make cash or whatever, but like most of the guys who are sponsored by GG were promoting them whilst it was like a great site to rail, like beatable games, etc. Like they have enough money, I would assume, and for them to like, if they made their fortune, so to speak, playing poker, and now they just kind of stand by and let a site ramp up the rake to levels where it kind of does kill the game in the long run, especially if the trend continues across other formats, and just not say anything. I think it's a bit disingenuous, really. So like, I guess I would like to see more interaction from the GG reps on the matter. Like I don't know if they're not putting pressure internally to increase it. Yeah, that's fair. I did reach out to Daniel, and he just told me to basically stand by. So it's clearly a discussion amongst them internally. I imagine that they're trying to get their messaging together, and also I imagine it has to do with the fact that you guys are still kind of negotiating terms in some sort of capacity. It doesn't really help to send a message through your ambassadors that may ultimately end up changing 2 days later anyway.
Yeah, it makes sense. And like I said, I don't know what's going on in internal discussions. It was more just initially, obviously, to kind of get the more support would have maybe been better. But yeah, I understand, obviously. Yeah,
that's fair. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was really enlightening. I appreciate you always being open for reasonable discourse and kind of cluing us in what's going on in the high stakes community online. Best of luck moving forward here. If there's anything we can do to amplify or get the ball rolling in your favor, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yep, no worries. Much appreciated, everyone. And thanks for all the help.
Thanks, George.
Thanks. Thank you.
So you ready to play some 100K on GG or what?
Well, I was more so like thinking about at the same time when people take the approach of why do you care about high stakes, it's very quick to forget that most of the people that are in high stakes did not start at high stakes. Most of them, really, at least after a certain amount of time. You start from playing small stakes. Like Linus even had that 2+2 thread where he had a bankroll challenge at 100 and out.
Yeah.
And then move on years later, now he is open sitting 100K.
Yeah, there's a handful of those guys. Doug obviously has that similar story of, having gone busto at small stakes and then made the rise through the ranks. Seaver has spoken out about like how he used to just battle his way through the lobbies and things of that nature. The issue is that I think the question of like, why should we care about high stakes isn't from the community standpoint or the player standpoint. I think it's from the operator standpoint, right? And George did a pretty good job of outlining why they should care. Bringing in these whales, just like any other gambling entity, is very important to your liquidity pool, even if it is kind of getting sucked up to the top a little bit, because you keep those games healthy, which means you keep the games below them in the ecosystem also healthy. You don't have guys who are capable of beating 10K NL playing 1K NL or 500 NL, something of that nature, right? And that's really important, I think, to a sustainable ecosystem. And maybe that gets a little bit overlooked, because my initial knee-jerk reaction to this is it's not that high stakes doesn't matter, but my initial knee-jerk reaction was, bro, they're not going to care. Like, they're not going to lower the rake. They're just going to tell you to go bug off, and they're going to wait for other people to fill your seats. Small
community.
It is a small community. I didn't realize quite how small, and I think that that's a little bit nearsighted on as a knee-jerk reaction, whether it's just mine or it's shared by the actual site itself. Big picture, like, these guys matter. They have 7, maybe 8 figures in liquidity tied up on that site.
Yeah, and also if
you're raking it.
Yeah, and when you look at sort of potentially the network that George was talking about with the high stakes guys lower, where George works with BitB, and now when people from BitB get better and go from small to mid to high stakes, now you're not getting their action either.
Right.
So you're kind of stifling at the top, which then leads people to go away anyways too.
That's a really key point that most sites, I'm sure, aren't aware of, is that the CFPs and the stables are really the backbone to online poker in its current form. Whether you're talking about MTTs, low stakes, mid stakes, or high stakes cash, in some way, shape, or form, these CFPs and stables are going to have a huge impact on the overall liquidity at whatever stake you're looking at, whatever game format you're looking at, etc. Right? Because they are the game starters from the professional standpoint, right? And they're looking for ecosystems where they can not only just win, but put in volume. And in order to put in volume, it has to be sustainable. So whether we're talking about that being rake, traffic, volume of games running, what have you. Yeah, game integrity, what have you. All of that is going to point to the site that wins and checks all these boxes, right? It's still predicated off of the high stakes. That's the template that's easiest for them to get correct, because it's such a small pool to make happy.
Right. It's almost like, well, we already talked about the disalignment of player and operator, but when you look at the environment as a whole, and let's say the highest stakes you had running was only one table, and then the regs from that table stopped playing because the operator moved the rake up,
right?
And now you don't have that game anymore. Like, looking at it from the very small sense and then kind of branching outwards is sort of how you want to look at your entire structure as a whole.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think Card Rooms Live do a good job of this. Like, when Airball and I were shopping the match around to places to play, everybody gave us their private rate, which is basically $200 a half, $400 an hour. And it's like, okay, to secure a table, like, that's what it's going to cost. And we're just like, fuck, man, that's $50K in rake that we're going to pay each. No, sorry, $40K that we're each going to, $20K each that we're going to pay over 100 hours, right? It's like, plus add in tip. So it's going to end up being like $25K when it's all said and done. It's like, that's way too fucking much. And like, he tried to shrug it off and be like, oh, you're going to penny pinch the rake or whatever. It's like, bro, that's a lot of fucking money. That's like over 50 big blinds, 63 big blinds that you're just taking off the table from each of us. You know what I mean?
It doesn't just hurt you, it hurts both of you.
Right. It hurts everybody involved. It's like, it's silly to pay that whenever we can obviously get a cheaper rate. We could just play a non-private table and pay like 1/3 or 1/4 that cost. And very quickly, like, everybody that we were speaking to was willing to come down, because they understand that this is not an opportunity for them to make money, but instead an opportunity to fill an otherwise empty table and bring attention to their room, right? And we started with Resorts World, and I've so far enjoyed it there, but like, there's a good chance that we play some at the Bellagio and perhaps some other places around town, just simply due to the fact that we like all of these rooms and they're all willing to work with us.
Yeah. And regardless of, not for, call it, personal gain from GG's standpoint, but taking the time to negotiate and go through these things in order to have that infinite gain mindset to make the players on the other side happy while keeping their business afloat is a really good look, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Is actually trying to make a change that when you get feedback,
depends
you
what the
answer.
ultimate outcome is, obviously, right?
Sure. If it's successful,
Yeah.
and if they say like fuck off and nobody else plays anymore, then we'll sort of see what happens. But
Yeah.
it's been very easy for high stakes guys to move action, as I've seen the ACR lobbies get bigger as well.
Yeah, well, that's the thing though. It's only easy within a certain amount of boundary. Like his point to Stars and Party is that you just can't get money on there, and I know that that's been a problem for a long time. I remember Pads tweeting that he was like game selecting certain tournaments on those sites because he couldn't reload. And there was this fear of like going busto if you're just going to fire this really good 10K and not cash it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, there are definitely some hurdles that online faces right now. And I think that it's going to take a cooperative effort between both consumer and operator in this instance to kind of shake off the rust, get it right, you know, go through some trial and error together and figure out what works best for everybody as a whole. But like, yeah, to your point, like the fact that they're communicating is a great first step. Whether, you know, they tell them to fuck off ultimately or not is to be determined, and fingers crossed that they don't, because it's nice to see a precedent set where operators are willing to work with their consumer base.
Yeah, I'm sure people were mad when Stars took away their stuff, but Stars didn't care.
Right.
They were just like, okay, yeah, S&E is gone.
Yeah, and like if they had been willing to have open discourse, the ultimate result wouldn't have made it any better. You know what I mean? Like them still just ultimately saying like fuck off would not have been like, well, you know, at least they heard out our complaints. So really actions are going to speak a lot louder than words in this instance. And you know, for what it's worth, like I know I keep doubling back to what I know best, which is the live realm, but the operators in the live space, by and large, especially when you're talking about the high stake level, are really, really receptive to feedback. Whether you're talking about Aria and the high rollers that they run, Poker Go, in coordination with Aria, the Win, and all these amazing events that they've put on, the WSOP, they're always super receptive to hearing what the loudest voices in this community who are kind of speaking on behalf of everybody have to say. Now, does it always result in what we want? Not necessarily, but it's a hell of a lot better than them just ruling with an iron fist and us taking it, or us having to take it or leave it, because what doesn't work in this arena, as we've seen year over year, decade over decade, is forcing us to speak with our wallets. And it's just as simple as, if there are no better alternatives, the only option then would be to leave. And most people don't want to leave. So they're willing to take the worst of it when it comes to still being able to ante up and actually play in a game that they love, right? Which is unfortunate, because a lot of times we'll take the worst of it when it comes to high rake or it comes to unfair games or whatever the case may be. But I think for online, they have a lot more leverage because they can just go play live.
This boycott situation is kind of prisoner's dilemma, isn't it? Where there's a couple people, like George was saying, that are just playing games now, even with the rake being higher.
Yeah.
And when the games run, I'm sure they're really, really good.
Right.
Because there's still like VIPs and stuff gambling. But also at the same time, it's the very short-sighted money now. Also get the benefits from money later. Because if negotiations do happen and stuff comes back around, they still made the profit in this situation as well.
Right. He said it's only like 4 or 5 regs at this point. So you're talking about like 5% of the overall player pool. But to your end, if like there's an influx of recs now all of a sudden, because that was GG's plan all along, I think it becomes a little bit difficult now if you are the 45th best reg in that 90-man chat to not just be like, well, fuck you guys, I'm just gonna make money now and like just be done with this, you know. And like as each and every one of those guys stops holding out, the boycott does weaken. But to his credit, so far it's been a tremendous success and the first of its kind.
It's really hard to fucking do, and it's a lot of work. And
we just haven't seen a successful boycott in poker ever. That's going to do it for us today. We appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion about rake, online poker, and its future. Don't forget, we do have an academy this weekend. I believe we still have 1 seat, but maybe not. I'm not sure.
1 seat.
Okay, yeah, we do have 1 seat. And then we also have the MTT Academy right before the WSOP. That's May 25th through the 28th, I believe.
24th
to 27th. I was close. If you guys are interested in that, head to academy.solveforwhy.io. Click the banner above. You'll be able to get more information on it. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're going to be joined tomorrow by Jeff Platt and Brent Hanks.
They're back
in the building. They're going to be back.
Straight off of 10th place.
We're
seventh.
here.
He got
Seventh.
seventh. Don't I saw the man short.
I'm so
Good job,
upset.
Jeff. Nice run.
I'm so upset. I'm not going to be able to be here tomorrow. And I feel like I haven't seen Brent and Platt in like a month.
Yeah.
But I have faith that you guys are going to hold it down. You're going to talk airball all day long, I'm sure. We're going to get to the bottom of all this shit.
We'll be announcing the winners too of the NCAA tournament.
Correct.
I think the actual winner had reached out to me. So just tomorrow we're going to let everyone know about the prizes and go from there.
Oh, sweet.
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you all noon tomorrow.
Peace.
Later.